Are you ready? The Cornelia Stephanie Show, Wake Up to Love, your call to action. Join Cornelia as she empowers others to live heaven on earth. Cornelia teaches listeners how to be the authority over yourself, embracing your inner guru. Feel yourself uplifted into limitless expansion, integrating ease and grace in a changing world. This show will cover topics such as unconditional love, your physical body, how to be in extraordinary relationships, create financial and emotional wealth, embracing entrepreneurship in the new earth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cornelia Stephanie Show. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. I'm excited about the topic of what we're going to be talking about. And if you've been here with the Cornelia Stephanie Show, you've most likely met and heard about our guest today. That's Tanya Painter. She's back. She's a naturopathic doctor who left the world of traditional medical care to create an online business and coaching program for women struggling with chronic migraines. And she's also got a fabulous podcast that she's going to be telling us about here in a little bit. But she wanted to come on today to talk about the importance of incorporating our faith in our health journey and some of the research that we have around it. Because she says that faith and medicine are closely linked. Recent research is showing that spirituality can affect our brain function, and practices like meditation and prayer can boost mental and physical health. They activate brain areas related to attention and empathy while calming those tied to self-awareness. This has a positive impact on our stress response and feelings of well-being. Research has found that incorporating spiritual exercises like mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and centering prayer can significantly help with chronic pain and depression. These findings highlight the benefits of including spiritual practices in our health routines, promoting a holistic approach that nurtures both body and spirit for overall well-being. I love that we're going to talk about this. Welcome to the show today, Tanya.
Hi, thank you, Cornelia. It's so good to be here.
So good to have you back. And yes, I can't even think of, nowadays, how it is nowadays, just with so much change and everything that's going on, what's happening to our nervous system and everything that we are experiencing, and how important it is to have a regular practice so that we can reduce some of the stress in our life, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There is so much. There's something missing, right? There's something missing. And I think a lot of people through 2020, I've heard over and over again, like that was a game changer for them as far as their priorities and really starting to seek something a little bit more than what we've got going on in this world, right? And so that actually prompted my own research into this topic. It's like, well, how does incorporating, a healthy spiritual life, our relationship with God, how does that impact our physical health? Is there any research out there about it? And I discovered this whole new topic of neurotheology, where they're actually doing research. They're doing functional MRIs. They're measuring cortisol levels. They're looking at all of the ways that a healthy spiritual practice has on our physical health. I'm like, wait a minute, this is, there's something missing here. And as I dug more and more, like without fail, every single one found, well, I won't say every single one there. We can talk about some of the outliers, but for the most part, like 90% plus found that if we're engaged in regular spiritual activity, that we have better outcomes, better emotional outcomes, less chronic pain, less fatigue. And without fail, every single one of those studies says this is something that needs to be looked at more and something we should be utilizing in primary care to help improve the patient outcomes. So this is a topic we need to be talking about. This is something that's really important to our health as human beings.
Maybe it's foundational.
Yeah, I would definitely argue it's foundational.
Right. And maybe it's foundational because really it hasn't been, you're just now bringing out the research, talking about it. It hasn't been something that has been foundational in our medical industry, right?
Not for a couple hundred years. I mean, it used to be very foundational. Religion was, something that we built our country on. We built a lot. Basically, all cultures had a religious foundation, and it's only in the past couple hundred years that we've actually gotten away from that as being foundational, and now we're reaping the consequences of that.
Yeah, I just want to say too, for the audience, that we're talking about a spiritual practice, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be a religion. It can be a spiritual practice, and whatever that means to you, you get to define your own spiritual practice and how you live that in your life. But we're talking about how having a regular spiritual practice, how that has an effect on your well-being.
Yeah, but actually, I'll take that a step further and say that there's actually a hierarchy. So what the studies are finding is that we'll call it secular, which meaning no spirituality, no nothing, just like focusing in. So we'll talk about meditation. There was a study that was found that a secular meditation, so the sun feels good on my body, I'm breathing deeply, something that has nothing to do with God. So that was better than no meditation. A spiritual, just general, I am one with the universe, or however that looks, that was better than a secular meditation. And people who were focused in specifically on God and had a religious piece to it was the best of all. And this is what they found, was that when we are actually a part of an organized religion, I'm not saying you have to be, because definitely being involved in some sort of spiritual activity is better than none. But the research is actually showing that those who are involved in a healthy religious community have better outcomes than just being spiritual or considering yourself spiritual. So there is a component of that religious, community oriented, that I think is a piece of what we need to look at, is what does this mean for us?
I think it's important. But I also feel like part of the reason why that is working, or why, being part of, per se, the religious community, is because people need to belong.
Yes,
People need to
community.
belong, a community, and we need
Mhm.
to be a part of something. We need to have, because it's a basic human need to be part of a belonging.
Mhm.
So the only reason I want to, clarify the religion piece, because there's a lot of people that are still very turned off
Yes.
because of the bad programming and different things that
Mhm.
happen in religion. So I don't want to turn anybody off with this, and keep it open to where, whatever your way is for communicating with God, the beloved, the universe, source, and for you to have communion with God in that way. And also keep in mind that it's important that we have a belonging, that we belong
Yes.
to a community, which I think is really important. But going now to, so it's coming out, basically, the data is there, the science is there, the research is there, and now it's becoming a foundational piece. Because why do you think that is? Is it because our nervous system relaxes when we are connected to God, when we feel connected to God, when we feel, what do you think that is?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that happen when we're focused in on something outside of ourselves. Different parts of our brain light up, and so we have the pieces that are associated with self-awareness and with stress and things like that. We start to see them quieting down, and we start seeing other areas that are lighting up, that are more associated with calm and peace and relaxation. And so this is really key for us as human beings, the way that our body works. We have essentially two types of nervous systems. We have our fight or flight. It's called our sympathetic nervous system. And then we have our rest and digest, or our parasympathetic nervous system. We usually, in today's society, we live in fight or flight. We are in the stress turn on pretty much all day long. And we're meant to operate out of our parasympathetic, out of our rest and digest. And so if you think about, we'll use the old adage of someone running away from a bear, right? When you're in that fight or flight response, what do we need to survive in that moment? We need elevated blood sugar so that our blood or our muscles have energy to run away from that bear. We see that our immune system is not necessary, so that gets shut down. We don't need digestion at that point. That gets shut down. And so we start seeing that we're not operating the systems that keep us healthy and feeling good when we're in that fight or flight response. When we're in the rest and digest or our parasympathetic, when that is turned on, then we start seeing our immune system is working better. Our digestion works. We're absorbing more nutrition. Our blood sugar is lower. Our blood pressure is lower because we don't have to have those stress responses when we're relaxed at home, just hanging out. And so what we're finding is that as we are engaged in either a religious activity, a spiritual activity, prayer, whatever that is, we're finding that we're turning on that parasympathetic. And so if we can learn how to live more in that parasympathetic rest and digest mode and get away, only utilize our stress mode when we need it, as it was built for us to use acutely, over maybe an hour or two through the day when we have something come up. If we can get away from operating out of that as a regular place of operation, we start seeing our body works better. And so we can see that the brain pieces, or the parts of the brain that control those relaxation centers, are turned on during our meditation, our prayer, becoming one with God, something outside of us. And we see them shut off when we're not focused on that, when we're living in our stress mode.
Yeah, I totally can relate to how that works, because I've experienced that myself. When you're really in high stress, and the thoughts that you're thinking, how the thoughts is connected to an emotion, and how that right away makes you go down a rabbit hole, can make you go down a rabbit hole, and then you've got all this emotion going on, and you're just going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And how I don't know if you use the practice journaling, but I am an avid journaler. And really, that's actually what I used to heal myself with the art, through the art of journaling, over the course of the last decade and a half, when I started really practicing journaling. And I found that journaling actually raises dopamine, uh,
Mhm.
right? And because again, you're having an awareness, or you're sharing insights, reflective insights, through the journaling, and whatever it is that you're journaling about.
Yeah, and that can be a really helpful tool, especially when your brain won't shut down. I can't tell you how many people have told me meditation doesn't work for me. I can't keep my brain quiet. And actually, if we look at the Latin word for meditation, it actually means to focus intently on something. It doesn't mean empty your mind. We've kind of changed that meaning. What it means is to focus in on something. So if we're focused in on God, if we're focused in on insights and trying to grow ourselves spiritually speaking, then we start seeing that we can meditate, and doing journaling is a great way of connecting our very busy minds to something physical, so that we can kind of write out the thoughts. And yes, I've done free writing. It's something that I absolutely love, to help unlock some of those hidden emotions and things that we don't even know we're carrying around with us. And it's a great way of, just for anybody not familiar with free writing, it's just, you just start writing. You don't have to write about anything, just whatever pops into your head. And I'll be quite honest with you, when I first started this, what I started writing about was, this is so boring. I hate journaling. I don't want to be doing this right now. I'd rather be out in the sun. Look at the sun, how pretty it is on the trees. And then it would just my mind would start wandering on the page. And then pretty soon I was talking about all of these dark emotions that I didn't even know were bottled up. And it just kind of started flooding out. It's a fantastic process for people who really need to try to let go and tap into some of those more hidden things that we kind of suppress. But I will put a caveat on there. You have to be prepared for the emotional response that comes with some of that. So you need to make sure that you're in a safe place, and that you're able to kind of process through some of those things. At least that was my experience. I don't know about you, Cornelia, but
Yeah, that's part of the creating that safe container, and just really checking in to see, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? what is it that I want to, reveal to myself? What is it that, so it sounds like you went in with a different energy. You went in with just writing about something. I don't want to be here. I don't know why I'm doing this. I went in with, okay, I'm here. Let's get to the bottom of this, right? And so I love journaling.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's amazing, and I wish that I liked it more. But it was assigned to me, so I went through a very traumatic event. I used to be a law enforcement officer. I was involved in an officer involved shooting, and so part of the therapy around kind of working past that trauma was this free writing. And my counselor assigned this to me, and I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds really boring. And she's like, good, then start with that. That's how you can open up every day that you don't want to do this. Write about your reluctance to start this and just see where it takes you. I was like, okay, I'm game. And so that's what I did. And it really was a phenomenal tool to help me kind of work through some of that trauma. So
Yeah, I think the other thing that's very helpful is when you have journal prompts.
yeah, I could see that being really helpful as well.
So if you don't necessarily know what you want to write about, but writing out journal prompts, ahead of time or at another time, or purchasing one of those. They have a lot of books nowadays that you can purchase with journal prompts. So
Mm.
that's a fun way too.
My favorite way, actually, and it's not really, I mean, I guess it kind of is, but it kind of isn't, are some of the Bible studies that are out there. And so I'll go through my Bible study, and they'll have throughout there applications, right? Like, write about what this means to you. How do you see this fitting into your life? What do you understand about this? And as you sit there and think through that, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you get a lot of self-revelation, a lot of understanding about yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses and things that you can work on. And that's been really revealing to me, which is somewhat similar, but again, a little bit different.
So what would you like to, how do you want to take this call now? You want to focus on faith, on spirituality, and how that is creating a better well-being for yourself rather than being in a stress mode.
Yeah. So, we have I have several research articles. So I don't know how in depth we want to get into that, but, and we can also link them to show notes if you have people in your audience who like to actually see the research themselves. But, I have a handful here that I've kind of looked through, that basically, all of them show that chronic pain, severe depression, pain induced depression, let's see, what are some of these other things? High blood pressure, cortisol levels. So this is a big thing. A Rutgers University doctor discovered that meditators had a nearly 50% reduction in cortisol levels. And so this was in a population of police officers. And so you can imagine they have very high stress response, like they live in fight or flight all the time. And just by engaging in, and I believe this was just a mindfulness, it wasn't even a religious spiritual thing. It was just a secular mindful behavior meditation. And I don't remember if it was just breathing or what it was exactly, but that they showed a 50% reduction in their measurable cortisol levels, which is our major stress hormone. So when we are in high fight or flight, we have elevated cortisol levels, and this is part of what causes elevated blood pressure, increased risk for cardiovascular disease, increased or decreased immune status. So all of the negatives that come from being stressed are usually in some degree related to the level of cortisol you have going on in your body. And so what they found is that as they were meditating, their measurements reduced by 50%, and that benefit continued for 3 months after they stopped that regular practice. So this actually has implications for longer term use than just in the moment. This can establish these a new way for your body to be handling the stressors that we're involved with day to day as we continue to engage in these types of behaviors. And so we just have to find the time to incorporate them into our day-to-day life so that we can that it becomes a habit for us, right? It becomes a priority. And as we find that we're engaged in that, what we're seeing are across the board, we're seeing improved numbers, quality of life, emotional, and like depression, anxiety levels, all of those are improved.
Yeah. I think it's so important. I wouldn't know where I I wouldn't know how to do this without my practice.
Mm,
I really wouldn't. I really wouldn't want to. It's kind of like, I wouldn't again, we talked about that being foundational and
yeah.
having a practice. Like, one of my routines that I love is I love going out in the mornings early, and I love being out in nature and talking to God. I love being on my morning walks and being with the trees and listening to the birds. And that is how I want to start my day. I
Mm,
want to start my day. So I think a part of what's important for us and our well-being is really, can you make the time, will you make the time for the things that are important to you and that will increase your well-being, that has a long-term effect, right?
right. Right. And we can find, a lot of people are turned off by the idea of meditation or even prayer or things like that. And so it's important for us to find ways, as you mentioned, to feel connected to God. And so walks are a great way to do that. And then, you can start talking to yourself, which is essentially turns into, like, God hears those things. So you can, just comment on the beauty around you. And interestingly, there are studies on there as well. The things that we focus on can, if we have more of a positive outlook and more of a gratitude outlook, that people that are practicing that method of thinking have better outcomes, better emotional stability. They have less depression, anxiety. They have increased quality of life. And so again, we can see that what we choose to focus on really will define some of our physical illnesses that can come out, that we actually see as we're focused on our problems and the stress of life and all those things. When that is our major focus, we start seeing elevated cortisol levels and all of these other issues come. But when we're starting to focus in on gratitude and just nature and the beauty around us, we start to actually see some changes happening physically as well.
You want to hear something that's really interesting? I just was reminded of that I had this experience a couple years ago. I ended up in the emergency room with some chest pains that I had for a little bit.
Mm,
And when they did all my tests, they did all the vitals, they did everything, right? Everything showed up normal. It was so interesting, a person that's coming into the emergency room with chest pains, that all the vitals are all normal. There isn't anything there that would cause that gave them any alarm for anything, right? So later on, I discovered for me what it was. I started, I stopped doing my own process that I developed over the years, and that was processing my emotions. I
mm,
had some grief that had accumulated around my heart and around my lungs that had been unprocessed, and that was now creating pressure so
mm.
that I can get to it, so that I can get to it. I ended up being in the emergency room for 6 hours, but they couldn't find anything, right? It
Yep.
was one of those situations. But think about it, a person that has chest pressure and they couldn't find anything, like everything was looking normal, which again, it just goes to show you because inside of myself, I was feeling calm and
Mm,
I wasn't, but I just felt that pressure. So once I started going through my process again, and started picking that up again,
mm.
I started feeling better. So it was my body's way of letting me know, get back to it, girl. What are you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and that's where something for someone who doesn't have a process or they don't know how to access that. And they're like, well, maybe that's part of what's going on with me. That's where that free writing or that journaling can be really helpful to kind of get some of those things out and into the forefront of your mind. So you're like, oh, wow, this thing that happened to me like 14 years ago, this is still with me. Like, where did this come from? And it's interesting how as we think that we've dealt with stuff, I've had many clients tell me, well, I've gone through years of counseling, like the abuse or the PTSD or the situation. I've dealt with that. That's not an issue for me anymore. That's not contributing to my migraines. And then as we kind of dig a little deeper and we do some of these exercises, we still see some of that coming back up. And it's like, it's not quite dealt with. Like you're still holding on to some of that. And so working on kind of getting rid of some of those thoughts. And again, how can we do it? Like we can't really, it's hard to do it on our own. And that's, I think that's another piece of why incorporating God into this process, he helps us through all of this. And so, when we have that tool, we're able to finally let go of things that we've been holding on to, but we can't do it on our own. We can't even necessarily do it with another human or friends or a counselor or whatever. There's something very vital to that relationship with God that will help us to continue processing through the grief that we experience here on earth that only he can rid us of fully.
Yeah. Well, I feel like part of what that is about is because prior to now of this level of awareness of what you're talking about, develop this relationship with God, surrender to God, have this communion with God, bring this back into this 0 point cellular energy, bring it back into the foundation, bring it back, so that whatever you're going to build from now on, that it's going to be built upon that.
Mm.
And I think that's why that's so important, because ultimately it is your relationship with God, with Source, that that is going to be saving you.
That's really interesting that an interesting way of putting it, that it's a way of kind of clearing out and strengthening that foundation. I keep hearing that, we have a God-shaped hole in our hearts and that we try to fill it with all kinds of things, success, money, family, whatever it is that tries to fill that hole, and nothing quite does because it's made for God. It's there for him. And once we do that, I mean, that kind of goes to, if there's a chunk out of our foundation, nothing is going to be stable until we have him filling that and making that solid foundation that we can then build upon. I like that. That kind of completes that picture of our God-shaped hole that I keep hearing about.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing I just want to say, my belief system is that we came to heal the separation that we feel when we felt that we were separate from God and that God abandoned us, and that we felt betrayal and all the things. We came to heal that, and we came to remember that we've never been left by God. God has always been with us, and God is also lives within us, and God is inside of us, and that we are children of God, and that we are sparks of God, and that we are at one. And so when you're having that conversation with God, having that conversation with yourself, it's that intimate connection, that intimate communion that you are now strengthening and nurturing. That's right.
Yeah.
So you bring your space, your time, your energy, your desires, your worries, your fears, your gratitude, your love. Show me this, show me that. How do I do this? How do I do that? Help me with this, help me with that, to the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And he wants to hear all of it. He wants to hear all of it. And, and that's an interesting thing that you say about, he's always with us and he's in us, but he doesn't force himself on us. So we can choose to reject him. We can choose to not have him within us. And I think that's part of where this spiritual practice is so necessary, because we have to continue, like every day I find, like every day I have to invite him in. I have to ask him to fill me with his spirit, because if I go 4 or 5 days and I kind of forget to do that, I find myself not as close with him. I don't feel him as strongly. I don't feel like my days go as well. I feel more anxiety, and it's like, what's going on? Oh, I actually haven't carved out that time and invited him to be here with me again. And so he's constantly wanting us to renew that friendship, renew that relationship with him, and continuously like keeping him in the forefront of all that we do, so that our focus isn't on him, is on him. And when we are focused on him, we can't be focused on our problems. It's kind of, they're mutually exclusive, right? You're either focused on your problems or you're focused on God. And I tell you what, problems bring stress and anxiety and all kinds of uncomfortable feelings, and focus on God brings nothing but peace for me. And so it's like, why would I choose to focus on these other things? If I focus in on him, the other stuff sorts itself out. It always does. Because he will help that, right? We just bring our problems to him and he will help us to kind of work through it. Doesn't mean he solves our problems, but he will definitely give us the strength to get through them and to work out those problems for his benefit, for our benefit, for the benefit of people around us. And I think that's also part of it, right? Because again, it's where our mind is focusing. And we have the science that shows when we focus on the positive, but that we have better outcomes, better health outcomes than when we focus on the negative. So it kind of comes full circle to that.
And taking the reins on your own health and well-being and your healing. That's an important piece, when I think about my body, I always think about my body. My body is a temple, and
Mhm.
it is, it houses the spirit, right? And how do I take care of this temple? And so, like when you're saying, when you don't connect with God every day, you don't feel the relationship, that it's been, you feel a little bit missed and not connected. And that's why having a daily practice, making it a relationship every day, the same way that you relate with your partner, the same way that you relate with your kids, the same way that you relate with, other things. It's an important piece to have that daily connection and relationship, that daily invitation, that daily communion. It's important, not just once a week.
Right.
That's a piece.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, if you go to church once a week, that's great. Maybe you do small groups, but then what are you doing in between those? Like we can't just kind of go every once in a while. It's something that we do need to commit ourselves to, which I've just recently found. Like I honestly, I was like a twice a year church goer. I didn't go at all. And then I found myself through 2020 becoming much more isolated because of all the shutdowns. And the only place that I had available to me at the time was a church. So I was like, well, I'll start going there because I just need some people. Uh,
Right.
and then, man, like that has just grown my relationship with God, just being in amongst that church. And I'll be honest, I hated church. I found it very boring. I didn't feel like it brought me any closer to God. I felt obligated to go, and it was something I dreaded. And I'm like, I don't see him wanting me to just force myself to go. Like my heart is not here. So why am I doing this? And I just hadn't found the right church, right? I hadn't found what really fit for me. And so once I did, and I found that family and that community, it just is amazing how much, and this kind of comes back to what you had said about us being in community, that we are creatures of community. And I realize now what I had been missing my entire life up until 2020, when I started going to church and becoming a part of that community outside of my nuclear family. I have a family of other people that I know if something happens, I can go to any of them and they would be there to help support me. And there's something stress relieving in and of itself there, just knowing that you have people that care about you and love you and will be there to help you through stuff. And I've never had that outside of my parents and my husband before. And so it's just really, there's something there as well. So we have to work on a relationship with God every day, but then we also have the opportunity to engage in these relationships with other people that will also help to further our sense of well-being. And there's something very freeing about being vulnerable with some other people and having them just kind of help support you, and then you in turn can be there for them. There's something very healing about that too that I never had before. I never realized. And I think that's, I haven't looked at the research on that one, but definitely from personal experience, I know that there's something very healing about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that calms the nervous system, that reduces the blood pressure, that does all the things that you were talking about earlier that are really important to, our well-being and what it is that we're doing to reduce stress in our lives, and really having a practice that we're dedicated to, devoted to, committed to. And when you said being part of that community really helped you to heal, helps you to heal. And again, it's that spiritual connection with the people that you share values, and that's an important piece. So it's that, because we need to belong. The way that I think about the church now myself is that inside of myself, because I talk to my inner family. I talk to, God. I talk to source. I talk to my angels. I talk to my inner team. And I feel like I am the church. And then I bring that church with me wherever I go, to my community and my relationships. And because it's again a cultivation of love that is there. And then I get to bring that to share it with people.
Yeah, and I think there's something very bonding when we do have God as kind of our the third person in any relationship that we have, right? There's almost an immediate connection with other people who hold, like you said, the same values and the same beliefs. That again, I think brings that level of healing relationships. It brings it to a whole new level.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how to use your faith, and then help you create a more holistic lifestyle, and also physical body, right? How
Right.
to do that. So, what would you think, like some action steps of what people could do to begin?
Yeah, so I think that sitting down and just kind of looking at the three pieces that make us up, right? And what I mean by that is we have our physical body, and there are definitely things that we need to do from a physical standpoint. Like we can't just all be spiritual all the time, right? We have practical things that we have to do. We have to eat well. We have to get up and move our bodies. So the things that we can do from a physical standpoint. But I think that the more I look at the research and what we've got, we have medicine backwards. We're practicing only on the physical body, and we're ignoring. I mean, we're doing better engaging in the emotional component, understanding the depression, anxiety, some of the mental illnesses. So we're doing better there. But up until just a couple of decades ago, like that was taboo. You didn't talk about your emotions. It's just physical stuff, right? So now we're opening that up, but still, like it's taboo to talk about spiritual health. We don't bring that in. That's considered a no-no. Um, and so what happens if we flip that? What happens if we start focusing in on our spiritual health? And then that drives us to investigating the emotions and what's going on there, which has an impact on our physical health. So maybe we look at, okay, here are the basic things that I need to do to take care of my physical body. Now let's go up here to the spiritual aspects. What can I do? What am I comfortable with? Where am I at? What do I believe in? And really just thinking about it, because honestly, I grew up Christian, and there were a lot of things that I didn't know what I believed. I know what people taught me, but I didn't know what I believed. And so I had to sit down and really think, what does this mean to me? What does my religion mean to me? What are all the questions and doubts that I have? And how can I get them answered? Because up until I got my doubts answered, I had a very, very weak to non-existent faith, even though I called myself a Christian. And so I think that it's important for us to, wherever we're at, we need to sit down and think, what do I believe? What is the evidence that I have for what I believe? Why do I believe this? Do I believe it just because someone told me to? Or is there evidence that will support my beliefs? And then just really digging in from a spiritual aspect to see where those doubts lie, and then how you can prove them right or wrong. And if they're wrong, then what is right, and seeking that truth. And then I think that, that's kind of been the journey that I've been on over the last few years, and really solidifying what I believe and why, addressing the doubts that I have. And I still have doubts, and I still have things that I don't understand about what I believe. And I'm continuing to pursue that so that it's clearer for me. And as I do that, my relationship with God grows. As my relationship with God grows, my relationship with other people grow. And I have noticed a drastic change, even though I've been a naturopathic doctor for over a decade. I've been treating myself for over a decade. And it's not until the last couple of years that I've noticed such a significant change in my health that was never there before, even though I was doing all the right things. And this was a major piece for me, is really understanding what I believe and why I believe it. And so I think that's one really practical thing that we can do wherever you are spiritually. If you're an atheist, why do you not believe in God? What are your beliefs there? What evidence do you have that God doesn't exist? Write those all down. What questions do you have about it? What doubts do you have about atheism, right? Because I'm sure that people who are atheists, they have doubts too, right? And so, but if you're Buddhist or if you're Islamic or if you're Jewish, whatever your doubts are, like write those down. Don't be ashamed of them. Like they're there. God knows they're there. Let's talk about it. Let's bring it out to the open. Let's figure out where those doubts are, why you have them, and how we can address them one way or another. And I think that can be a really practical step. It can be kind of scary, especially if you don't have an open and accepting community who will talk about your doubts. And I know from a Christian standpoint, up until I came to the church I'm currently at, it was not okay to doubt something in the Bible or doubt a teaching of a pastor. And now I understand, like, if you can't express those doubts and have people there that will help answer them and walk you through it, that's maybe not the healthiest church to be at, right? We don't want to be in cults. We don't want to blindly believe something simply because we're told to. We want to understand it from our heart, and we really want to investigate that. And so that I think that can be a really great step to just kind of start implementing, like, how you can become more spiritual without having to go, do anything that you're uncomfortable with, or just diving into prayer, or diving into the Bible, or diving into, the Quran or whatever. Like, let's just start with, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? And what evidence do you have for that? And then what doubts do you have? And just go from there.
Yeah. Back in the day when I was looking for God in all the wrong places, when I was looking for God everywhere, I remember after I found God, I remember going, okay, now that I found God, because I found God through an experience I had and I had this experience, and then I felt the Holy Spirit come through me. And when you have that experience, it's like you can't unhave it. And
Yeah, right.
like, okay. So once I had that, and then I was like, okay, well, what is God? And so when I started doing that, really looking at, okay, God is love. And so that was a beautiful way for me to have something that I can work with. What my belief system? What is God to me? What is God to me? Well, I believe that God is love. And so I was looking at, well, if I do everything that I do out of love, then I'm serving. As long as I do everything that I do out of love, then I'm serving. So it was that type of a practice and discovery. It's harder nowadays, I feel, because there's so much cancel culture and so many, different things that we've been taught, so many lies and manipulations and things that we were told that aren't true. And at the same time, it's all happening so that we can remember who it is that we are and what it is that we believe in. So if you're just beginning, embrace and accept where you are and discover and ask the questions. And I was even thinking about this right now for myself, to create a document, and I want to call it a living document. That's like my own, just for me, that I can keep updating this document about, where I stand on certain issues, certain things, because there is so much going on, whether it's political, whatever the issues is, but just writing it out. And this is where I stand on these things. And so as I'm revealing it, no, this is what it is for me. This is what it is for me. This is what it is for me, because I want to be solid in the things that I stand for, and that I know. And so that's why I was calling it a living document. And then I can just keep updating it. And then as new people, or, I meet new friends, or new people come into my life, when they want to know more about me or whatever, I'm also able to share. These are some of my views. These are some of the things that I think about. And I really like that idea.
I like how you call it a living document, because, I mean, again, even just in the last couple of years, how I think about different things change as my relationship grows with God, with other people, and I learn more. That, you know, what I believed a couple of years ago has shifted gently. I still hold very strongly to, you know, core biblical truths, but some of the non-salvation issues I've changed my mind on. You know, I still don't know where I stand on creation, how the whole Adam and Eve story and evolution. I'm still very confused about that. And I keep kind of changing my ideas based on things that I'm hearing and learning. But I'm continuously keeping myself open to trying to really put all the puzzle pieces together, because I haven't hit on something that really makes like true sense to me yet. And so I think it's great to be able to have that openness. I mean, we definitely need that firm foundation, right? On those matters of salvation, we need to have a firm foundation. We need to know what we believe. Those should never change. But then some of the other things that we're learning about, you know, what's a woman's role in the church? You know, how should a church handle, you know, gay, lesbian, transsexual things? You know, what does that look like? And some of those things that we really need to be able to have an open mind and a conversation about, as opposed to being very strict in what we believe. This is the only way. This is my way. This is the only way. And that's not a very Christian way to have an attitude, right? Like, we need to be firm in the truth, but we also need to understand where other people are coming from, the experiences and doubts and teachings that they've had. And we need to kind of sort through the whole jumbled mess to make sure, all right, are we standing firm on biblical truth? Yeah. Are we interpreting the Bible correctly? Because I think there's a lot of Bible misinterpretation that's happening. And then we have all of this infighting and arguing amongst ourselves. And then we're trying to teach other people about, you know, things, and we're just not quite getting it all right. And then we end up turning off a lot of people because we're not able to engage in a conversation with them. And so I like that idea of having the living document, so that as we're learning and we continue to grow in our understanding, that we can change some of those things and move forward in our relationships.
Yeah. And I just want to say that living document mainly is for me, because I am a sovereign person. I'm in my own authority, and I know where my authority lies. No, and not anywhere out, not in a system. I know where the authority lies. So where I get my answers from, where I listen to. So for me to be solid in that's the piece for me. This would be for me. And you know, because we do grow, we do change, and then maybe even things in the living document will change. You know, so, but it's just important for yourself to know where you are, because everyone is so opinionated. And one thing I can tell you, I'm not with the herd. I'm not with the herd, because I am a rule breaker. I'm going to be the one that's going to go the opposite direction, because that's just me, you know? So, I've
Trailblazer.
What is it?
A trailblazer.
Yeah, trailblazer, you know, so I have to be true to that path for myself. I'm not going to be going. I mean, I'll just give you just this quick example. When it was time to get the, I never, not once, felt an important call from my creator, from God, from inside of myself, that I should be doing that. And I checked in many times. Is this for me?
Yep.
And I never got a yes. This is for you. And so this is what I mean by being solid in what my knowing, in my communication, and where I stand. Didn't mean that I was pushing my views on other people, like they were pushing on me. Because I was being shamed and ridiculed, and you know, all kinds of things. But that's where I stand, and I'm grateful that I'm that way.
And the stronger the relationship we have with God, like, we can stand firmly in that, and everybody else can kind of push and shove and ridicule and persecute, and that's okay, because like, we can stand firm knowing that we have Him as our solid foundation, and if God is for us, who can be against us? So
yeah. So anyway, this is what this was a great conversation, and I already feel just stronger because of our open discussion about what we were talking about, and I hope that the audience will glean some insights and ahas from what we were talking about, and that you strengthen your spiritual practice, your daily practice, and your communication with God, with Source, and that you feel good, that you feel good, right? That
yeah.
you feel well and that you feel good. And that's an important piece. Would you like to let the audience know how to follow you on social media? And also, you have your podcast, and let us know where people can tune into that.
Yes, thank you. So I have a new podcast. I just actually put out my first episode last night. So you can find that on YouTube at The Christian Clinician. I also have, it will be available on Spotify and Apple and all those other fun places as well in the next day or two. But so The Christian Clinician, and you can also find me. So again, I work with women with chronic migraine. And if that is something that's of interest to somebody who was listening today, you can find more information about that at psalmmedical.com. That's PSALM medical.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and on Instagram at The Christian Clinician as well.
Yeah, this was such a great show. Thank you so much for coming on, Tanya. I appreciate you. And thank you, audience, for listening and tuning in. And we'll see you again next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.